Greetings and salutations, everyone. Welcome back to the Inn of Planar Crossroads. And as always, welcome back to our House Specials portion. We're discussing this time the promised, sometimes they're called lore dumps, sometimes they're just called a whole bunch of interesting things coming at you from out of the setting that you're in. But that's what we're going to talk about this time, and that's going to be categorized under the Creature Compendium for Season 1, or at least the first part of it. So, we're going to go over the races that are usually found that were found in this particular setting, and mainly Season 1. So that's going to include humans, halflings, dwarves, gnomes, sprites, and beastkin. Even though dwarves were mentioned, the ones that were interacted with most were these 6 races. So that should be fun. But before we branch into that, let's go ahead and do our normal thing with announcements. As far as announcements for the Inn of Planar Crossroads, we don't have a whole lot of things going on right this second, but we do have some fun things going on with it in the near future. First of which will be noticeable for those that bother to go to the webpage. We're going to be updating the graphics on the webpage, and the goal was to have it by June 1st, but we're going to push that a little bit and hopefully have it done by, at least some of the updates done, by June, by the end of the first week of June. But you should see it right around that time, Lord willing. It will depend on how quickly the people I'm working with to do my webpage get that worked around for me. But otherwise, it should be done soon. And they're busy, so I know I'm not fussing at them or anything, but I know it takes time. So, Lord willing, that'll be up soon, and it'll have the support us part and stuff like that will be there for you guys to go to, and hopefully have a way to finally do a PayPal option directly from the webpage. But that should come around in June, which will be next week from when this comes out, or a few days from when this comes out. So, that'll be fun. As far as any other announcements, we're going to be doing a collaboration soon. We'll be recording it in June, so you'll have to stick around for some of that being released on this channel and some of that being released on another channel, but no spoilers just yet on which channel that will be, though it is an easy guess for most of you, I'm sure. And that's all of the announcements. So, let's go ahead and get into this. This is the first part of the Creature Compendium. Maybe next time or the time after, we'll do something where we go over the enemies that they faced and how those were kind of put together in my head and stuff, and where they come from lore-wise. But this is going to be the lore portion for the Creature Compendium, and specifically the 6 races that were talked about and interacted with, I should say, the most this time. So we've got humans first, of course. Humans are the most, and I'll do the flavor text first on each of these. So let's go ahead and get into that. Humans, flavor text. Humans, the most populous race in the Centerland, humans of Atar, on average, grow to a height between 5 and 6 feet, with males usually being taller than the females of the same area. They are by far the most adaptable of the races of Atar, and though they live mostly in the Centerland, they can be found in all of Atar's populated regions. They seem to have a natural curiosity and creativity that, when coupled with their natural adaptability, makes them effective adventurers. And humans are always a little tricky to discuss and make you sound unique in settings when you have fantasy races beside them, but I hope to branch into that a little bit and do a little bit more of that. So, of course, you're going to get the basic information of humans here, which is important. But in Season 2, because humans will be interacted with in Season 2, I'm sure. So, humans will be expanded upon with new information in the second part of the compendium, in their second entry in the compendium. So, for Season 2. So, stay tuned for that one. But that's mainly them. And I didn't put any kind of art with these. You can see that I put the boxes there for the kids to draw in if they want to, when and if this ever gets out in that manner. But the humans I do want to have be different than like us here on Earth. Just they grow to about the same size, and they have basically the same looks. So I want to give them something different as far as personality, and that adaptability is what I'm going to do with that. The adaptability and the curiosity and creativity, because no spoilers for later lore entries, but not all the other races are as adaptable or as flexible in mindset and thinking as humans are, which makes them actually serve a purpose and uniqueness in this setting. So we'll branch into that another time. I got to keep these quick though, because there's 6 of them to get through, and these other ones will probably be more of interest in certain areas. Okay, sorry about that. I had to check something to make sure the recording was doing the right things, but it was. I think we were on halflings, so let's do halflings. Usually 3'6" to 4 foot tall. They love food, so much so that their last names are almost exclusively food related. While they have a very similar look with just slightly large feet and ears for their stature, setting them apart visually, halflings are more than just short humans. They seem to have a natural affinity to all things agricultural. Animals, crops, and the like all seem to fare wonderfully under their care. Some say that they even have a disproportionate amount of luck. And that goes back to, halfling luck and such like that. I haven't decided if that will be canon or not, but probably, because lucky halflings are always fun. As far as a little additional notes to that, I do imagine them looking pretty much like the hobbits you see in like Lord of the Rings or something, because those are just so classic, so wonderful. I like those little hobbits and the way they're designed and thought up and such. So I think that's why I went with that, though I did give them some more druidic style to them with the animal crops and things. A bit of a magic to them, because all the races except a few, I think, will be very influenced by magic, and you'll see that when we get to the dwarves, and onward. But we'll see how all that goes. I'm looking forward to seeing halflings explored, and I'm going to put out a poll after this comes out on what the new character's race should be when they get introduced. And it won't be human. It won't be human or beastkin, because we have both of those represented already in the party already. So season 2's new character introduction will be put out there as a, hey, do you want this, or this, as the additional next person to join the party. So that should be fun. Alright, so dwarf flavor text. Almost every dwarf is the same height, somewhere between 4'4" and 4'6". They call themselves stone folk because as they age, they eventually turn into stone and minerals. The stone they become is heavily influenced by what type of rock is common in the area they're born in. Their skin is always colored like their fated stone. For example, marble dwarves have skin tones in the patterns of marble. Gold dwarves have golden skin tones, and obsidian dwarves have shiny black skin tones. Dwarves of certain skin types tend to have affinities toward different jobs, but this isn't a rule. So I wanted to make the dwarves of this particular setting stand out from other dwarves, and I think this does it well. I've not seen this done with other dwarves necessarily. The fact that they literally become stone They literally become a statue of themselves as they age. Now, if they're killed violently or they die in battle, that's not necessarily what happens. It is a kind of a privilege of old age to become a statue in their grand mausoleum halls or something like that. I haven't fully fleshed that out in my mind, but that is what I'm thinking. And I feel like that gives them a real kind of different feel, a different theme to other dwarves that have necessarily come before them. Where the halflings are very much like the halflings and the hobbits of Lord of the Rings, but though not exactly the same, the dwarves are not. They are not like dwarves in... aside from the desire to craft and make things, they are not the same as Tolkien dwarves. There's this real sense of mortality with them, and this idea of tradition and things being set in stone. So that should be interesting to develop and see and just play with in the setting. So that is dwarves and some thoughts behind them. I've still got to keep going fairly quickly so we don't take too long. So gnomes were featured heavily in this particular one. We had one main dwarf, but we had several gnomes in this one. So gnomes got a little bit more attention as well. Gnome flavor text. Gnomes. At a glance, they are very similar to dwarves in custom and demeanor, but there are key differences that the two races are keen to point out. While dwarves are associated with rocks and metals, gnomes align more with precious and semi-precious stones. Rightly so, as their bones are literally made of them. This makes them quite heavy for their usual size of 2 to 2.5 feet tall. It also explains their racial name of jewel bones. Crafters of the highest degree, they often do the finer detail work on the larger pieces the dwarves create. Adult gnomes wear pointed caps that will more often than not be endowed with magical properties. So with this one, I wanted these gnomes to feel very different than other gnomes, but I also wanted them to have a very fun callback to the classic design of a garden gnome, which they're very much themed after, with the pointed hat. So that whole jewel bones thing, and a lot of this actually is coming from things that I had thought up long ago when I was a teenager making up my own world for a story I was going to write, and a game I was going to produce. And it kind of has matured into something like this. But the idea of the jewel bones, of their bones literally being made of jewels, was something I thought of way back then, and I was like, that would work. That would set these gnomes apart, and makes them, actually does make them more viable as a playable race, even though they're only like 2 feet tall, 2.5 feet tall, depending on which one you find, and that does not include their cap. I thought that would work excellent for this particular setting, since the dwarves are so heavily associated with stone, metal, and minerals. The gnomes being more heavily associated with something that they are not, which is semi-precious and precious stones. Like, there are gnomes with diamonds for bones. There are gnomes with lapis lazuli bones. And I didn't put it in here, but I probably will in the next one, if they're interacted with a lot in the creature compendium, that gnomes, their eyes are always whatever their stone is on the inside. Whatever their bones are, their eyes and their teeth reflect that. And it goes the same with the dwarves. Their permanent teeth, their adult teeth, are basically those metals. Not necessarily quite the same, but kind of. So there are benefits and drawbacks to that, and that'll be interesting to see. And I may drop that for the dwarves, because that would get a little tricky with really, really old ones wearing down their teeth. But that's just me thinking biologically. So this is very fantasy, and of the ones created, I think the gnomes are the ones that I like the most as far as the earthy races, or at least the mountain races, like the dwarves and the gnomes. I like the gnomes' idea of having that bones in there. So they also have mausoleums, but their mausoleums are basically their ancestors' bones on display. So that'll be fun. That'll be interesting. But that is that. Again, trying to keep on time. Sprites were introduced and used heavily as goblin material, so I put something about them in there, and they are really odd. I haven't fully gotten in my head what's going on with them yet, but here's their flavor text. So, sprites. An odd race. There is little definitive information about the creatures as a whole. Sprites are almost always 1 foot in height, with little less than an inch in variance. It is known that they have male and female variants, and that they seem to be born from eggs, but it isn't clear to even the sprites themselves where the eggs come from. They seem to just appear on the leaves of trees where the sprites often fly and make their tree houses. The eggs appear to mimic the colors of local flowers in the area, and materialize most in the spring. When one hatches, a sprite close to it will adopt it. So, I didn't want to give sprites a lot of hardcore definitive, hey, this is the lore of sprites, because they are very much the classic fickle fae type of fairy sprite thing that you see in a lot of fairy tales and literature and such. Not quite fae, that will be something that is very elvish, and I'll have that for next time, I believe. Next season we'll have some elves in it. So, elves and beastkin, which we'll get to in a minute. But the sprites, this idea for the egg actually comes from a thing that I saw when I was out working on the farm and walking in the woods. There's a little fungus that will get on to, I believe it's a fungus, that is really pretty. It's red, and it makes a little ball on like oak leaves and other things like that, other trees like that. And I just thought, oh, that looks like an egg, like a fairy egg or something. And that's where this came from. So this does come from something of a real world inspiration, but not because fairies are real, but because that looked like a fairy egg to me. My head thought, oh, that looks like a fairy egg. So that's what these sprites are. These sprites or fairies, they're more sprites than fairies, are that type of a reproductive thing going on. Now, if I expand on this, the idea is that it's their dust. The males and females produce different dust, and so those dusts get on certain areas, and where there's enough of that interaction with the male and female dust hormones, or whatever you want to say, that an egg is likely to magically form. But that's not in stone yet in my head, so I may shift that around, but that's some behind the scenes workings in my mind on that one. Alright, let's get to Beastkin, because I also came up with something for these that I wanted to touch on and discuss, because I think it lends itself well to more narrative and interesting storytelling with these particular races. So, the Beastkin flavor text. Beastkin. The Beastkin are a very unique race in that they do not breed true. Beastkin are born looking similar to a human or halfling child with vaguely animalistic characteristics, such as a peach fuzz fur, sharper teeth, or claw-like fingernails. But by the time they reach adolescence, they begin to display more definitive indicators, like horns, feet shifting into hooves, or scales replacing fur. By adulthood, they fully show the Beastkin subtype they belong to. This means that there have been accounts of Minotaur parents having a Naga son, or lupine parents having a feline daughter. And I thought that was a fun way to integrate the idea that lots of these different beast folk could be interacting in a single place. So sure, you're going to have a lot of Minotaur in a Minotaur village, but those Minotaur parents could also have, like I said, a snakekin kind of Naga son, or a couple of dog people could have a cat daughter in this example, in these two examples. So I didn't want to have just Minotaur and just Minotaur tribes and just Centaur tribes and just those onward and onward with whatever animal you wanted to put, because I would start thinking about the inner politics of that, how that would work, and even though it's interesting to have politics based around that racial thing, I don't think it works for this particular setting and what this particular setting is for. This particular setting is not for having... Well, it can be. It can be. I do have things in my head around that for older groups, around politics and interworkings and just the machinations of society. But I wanted to have it to where Beastkin are just Beastkin, and their subtypes begin to display as they get older. And that makes it better, because if a kid wants to make up, like if people play this at home, if they play in this setting at home with their children, and one of their kids wants to be their kids are brother and sister, and they want to be brother and sister in the game, but one of them wants to be a catfolk and one of them wants to be a bullman, or which is the Minotaur, or a dog werewolf guy, which would be the lupine. Well, you don't have to worry about that. They can literally still be brother and sister in the game if they want to be, if you want to have it that way, because they don't breed true, in the sense of a Minotaur and a Minotaur don't always make a Minotaur baby. And it's common enough where it's like, oh, well, that's just something that happens. Each individual is an individual. And it contributes to the idea, very much the idea that the race as a whole has culturally, which is individual freedom. It's one of the reasons they are mainly still tribal when they actually have across the mountain a kingship, or it's not quite a rulership like that, but a stronger empire. It's because they themselves, as a species, value individuality quite highly, because they themselves are not bred true. They are all individuals, and the tribe works based upon those individuals. And you do see them kind of group up, like if there's a lot of Naga, which is just the word I'm using for snake people. It's not true Naga, just like they're not true Minotaur. They will congregate together, but they don't necessarily have to be exclusive communities, because they are all Beastkin. So I thought that was a fun way to have variety within the Beastkin race, without having to make a whole bunch of individual races that might not be as fun or make as much sense in this little island nation, a little island continent. So, anyway, there you go. That's the flavor text behind these 6 races. Like I said, next time we'll probably I know we'll be interacting with elves, so you'll get to hear my particular spin on elves, and hopefully it will be something different. But you'll discover some of that as we go on. I think that's all for this time. It's probably going to be, based upon what I'm seeing, like a close to a 15-minute video, maybe 18, 20, but shouldn't be too long. So, Lord willing, that will be the case, and you guys will get to enjoy it. But, as always, like, share, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff, and have a great day. God bless, and enjoy. Bye.
This content was made possible by travelers and viewers like you. Thank you.
So halflings are next. Halflings, usually 3'6" to 4 feet tall. Usually 3'6" to 4 feet tall. I better put that in better read that better. They love food. I gotta fix that. Hold on. The stone folk, so called because as they age, they're called the stone folk because as they age, they eventually turn into stone and minerals. Hold on, I gotta fix that. I would have liked to have read this better. Okay. I had to stop and do several things on this one. Hopefully that won't make the video be funky. And hopefully all this stuff that's going on with the computer doesn't make it run funny either in the background on the Galaxy. I'm rendering something right now on the graphics, and it's hitting it pretty heavy. Graphics cards and hit it pretty heavy, so hopefully that didn't cause any problems.